This is El Hispano Americano. My father worked for this newspaper, and here's his name down here, J.Isaac Aceves. My father was a journalist, and he had been writing stories against Villa because the aristocrats did not want Villa, and the Villistas were the lower class people who were just following him because they wanted a leader. And so Villa was naturally angry at my father because he wrote how bad Villa was. You know, he wrote the bad things about Villa. So he took him prisoner, and he said that he was going to execute him. And so my father pretended to be lame, that he couldn't stand up, because Villa had said that he would not execute a man who could not stand up for himself against the wall. And so my father pretended to be crippled on one side, and he sat on top of the bed for 2 years, pretending to be paralyzed on one side. And finally, but the cute thing was that Villa had a secretary, because Villa was a very poorly educated little school teacher of a little village. And he became a leader by just having the people follow him, because they wanted somebody to follow. But he couldn't write and read as well as the educated ones. So he had a secretary, and his name was Mr. Antonio Perez Rule. Perez Rule, 2 words. And so when my father was taken to the hospital, to this military hospital, which was across the river from my mother's family house, Mr. Perez Rule was the secretary, and they saw each other, but they both kept quiet. Mr. Perez Rule was afraid that Villa would kill him because he knew my father, and my father was afraid that Villa would kill him if he knew that Mr. Perez Rule knew him. So they both kept quiet, and my father kept on writing about Villa from his bed, and the stuff was being smuggled out by Mr. Perez Rule, although my father was supposed to be a prisoner. But
did your father use his own name as he wrote these articles?
Yes, but they didn't know where he was. They didn't know how he was getting. Villa didn't realize that my father was still writing about him, and that Mr. Perez Rule was sneaking the articles out and getting them published in the newspaper. So eventually, after 2 years, Mr. Perez Rule came to my father and he said, "Isaac, you know what? He says he's going to execute you because he's sick and tired of waiting for you to get well, and he's going to kill you anyway." And he said, "You've got to get out of here." So he says, "Wait for me at such and such a place, and I'll be there." And Mr. Perez Rule went to the house of the girl whom Villa had married at gunpoint. She was a high society girl, very beautiful. And Villa went to her house and her father, her parents' house, and said that he would kill the young brother who was in the room if she didn't marry him. And he had a priest with him. So they were married, which in any language makes the marriage invalid if you are forced to do it. So anyway, Mr. Perez Rule said, "I will bring you some clothes." And he went to the girl's house.
That's the wife of Villa?
Yeah, the so-called wife of Villa. And got Villa's wedding outfit that he had taken to the house with the priest.
His
you know.
describe his wedding outfit.
Oh, it was just a very elegant suit and shoes and hat and everything. And Mr. Pettigrew borrowed them from this girl and took them to my father in a box. And my father was on crutches. So my father walked out of this military encampment, got to the end of the road, and kept on going to catch the trolley that went into El Paso, because there was a trolley that went on the international bridge, and once you were on the bridge, you were protected. So my father was going to get on the trolley. By this time he was dressed in the suit and stuff. And two men were across the street, catty corner from the trolley stop, and one of them said, look, there goes Don Isaac. That was my father. Let's get him. And so they started to run towards my father, and my father was almost on the trolley with the crutch and whatever he had. And he kicked the guy as he came to get him by the foot. He kicked him in the face, and the man fell, and the other one came running after him, and he stumbled over the one that my father kicked, and just then the trolley took off across the bridge, and my father was safe, and the two guys were rolling around on the street. When my father got to El Paso, he called my mother, and he said, bring your mother quickly to the Church of the Sacred Heart in El Paso, and just bring her. So my mother and my grandmother went, and the priest married them quickly, and then they took off for New Mexico. And they got to San Diego several days later. He took her to the Hotel San Diego, which was a very elegant hotel at that time. And then he went downstairs to the dining room, and he said to my mother, I met with the men who want me, and they're inviting you to dinner also tonight, but you have to dress for dinner. That meant a long dress and everything. And my mother said, I don't have any clothes. My father wouldn't let my mother go down in this chiffon blouse that she was wearing with the long skirt, which was part of a suit. And so she went back in the bedroom and she put on her nightgown, and she wore that underneath the blouse because my father didn't want the men